Maybe you are sitting on the edge of your bed right now, feeling the distinct, heavy pull of exhaustion that only comes after a day spent trying to manage everyone else's peace. You know this feeling well, the way your thoughts begin to run through a list of people who seem distressed, or a list of situations that feel unsettled, as if your internal radar is constantly pinging with warnings that you must immediately address. The room around you is quiet, the air cool against your skin, and the distant sound of wind brushing against the glass is steady. But inside your chest, there is a restless humming energy that simply refuses to power down. It is as if you are holding a cup of water, and you are so terrified that someone might knock it over that you have spent your entire day tensing your muscles, trying to keep the surface perfectly, unnaturally still. You have become a guardian of other people's emotional tides, thinking that if you can just smooth out their worries or anticipate their moods, you will finally earn your own sense of safety. But tonight, you are here because you have started to notice the cost. You feel drained, not by your own life, but by the weight of all these external ripples you have been trying to flatten with your own hands. You are not broken because you feel this way. You are not failing because you are tired of carrying the weight of the world. In fact, what you are feeling is the first vital hint of an awakening. It is the realization that your hands are tired, and the water is never going to be perfectly still, no matter how much you try to control it. The surprising wisdom we are going to explore tonight is this: the harder you work to stop the ripples in someone else's life, the more you disturb the water in your own. The mind believes that by fixing everything, it will finally find a place of quiet. But this is the central irony of the fixer's heart. Peace is not found in the absence of turbulence in the world around you. It is found in the stillness of the vessel that holds your own awareness. Tonight, we will not try to stop the wind. We will not try to command the rain to cease. We will learn how to let the sediment of your own life settle to the bottom, leaving the surface clear and undisturbed, regardless of what is happening outside your door. If it feels right, let your eyes close, or simply let them soften on a single point in the dim, shadowed room. You do not need to do anything with your breath. Just let it move at its own natural pace, like the slow, rhythmic drip of water into a deep stone basin. You have spent so much time being the one who checks, the one who adjusts, the one who balances. But tonight you are permitted to let the ladle fall. You do not have to solve the lives of others, and you do not have to fix the turbulence of the past. You are safe enough to stop managing the world. You are safe enough to let the ripples be exactly what they are. Maybe you have felt this before, that strange, sharp guilt that rises whenever you decide to put your own needs before the problems of someone else. You think that if you stop paying attention to the storm, you are being unkind. But consider this: if you are standing in the middle of a garden, and you are so busy trying to hold up every flower that has been bent by the wind, you will never actually see the garden itself. You will never know the beauty of the rain, because you are too busy trying to keep the leaves dry. Your concern for others has become a burden, a way of living that keeps you perpetually off balance, constantly waiting for the next thing that needs to be righted. But what if you are allowed to simply exist in the midst of the rain? What if the garden is not meant to be held by you, but meant to be experienced by you? The anxiety you feel is just the mind's way of saying it has forgotten how to let go of the ladle. It is used to the work of measuring, of pouring, of smoothing. It is terrified of the silence that follows when you finally stop trying to influence the surface of the water. But this silence is not a void. It is the natural state of your own heart when it is no longer being pulled in a dozen different directions. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be empty. There is a deep, ancient intelligence in your own body that knows how to recover, but it can only begin that process when you stop giving your energy away to things that are beyond your reach. Imagine that you are holding a wooden ladle, heavy and damp, and you are dipping it into a large, dark barrel of water, trying to catch every little disturbance that crosses the surface. You have been doing this for hours, for days, perhaps even for years. Your arm aches. Your mind is dull from the repetition. The water in the barrel is churned and murky, full of the very sediment you were trying to remove. Tonight, we will practice putting that ladle down. We will practice the art of letting the water be whatever it wants to be. If it is wavy, let it be wavy. If it is calm, let it be calm. Your job is not to be the keeper of the surface. Your job is to be the vessel that holds the depth. You are not responsible for the ripples caused by others, nor are you responsible for the weather that passes through the lives of those you love. You are only responsible for the clarity of your own center. As you lie here, feel the weight of your body pressing into the support beneath you. Imagine that the bed is the foundation of a great, sturdy barrel, and your awareness is the water contained within it. When you feel a thought arise, a worry about a friend, a regret about a conversation, a plan for how you might help someone tomorrow, see that thought as a small, falling leaf hitting the surface of your water. You don't have to reach for your ladle to remove it. You don't have to strain your muscles to push it away. You can just notice the ripple. You can watch as it moves toward the edge of your consciousness, and then watch as it fades, leaving the water behind it just as clear as it was before. This is the promise of this evening. You do not have to be the one who keeps the world in order. You are a human being, not an instrument of control. You were meant to witness the rain, not to stop it from falling. As your breathing becomes slower, let yourself notice that the world will keep turning even if you stop checking on it. The rain will continue to fall, but it will not become your burden. The wind will continue to blow, but it will not become your worry. You are finding your own personal depth, a place where the surface might be touched by the outside world, but the bottom, the very heart of who you are, remains still, clear, and perfectly at peace. There is a long, quiet stretch of time ahead of you, and there is absolutely nothing that requires your active intervention. You have reached the end of the day, and the day has ended without you needing to resolve everything perfectly. The unfinished parts of your life are not escaping. They are simply waiting, and they will be just as they are when you awaken. But you will be different. You will be rested. You will be settled. You will be, for the first time in a long time, someone who knows that they are not the manager of the rain, but a witness to the beauty of the water. Just breathe, and notice how much easier it is to be when you have finally decided to stop fighting the surface. In a remote valley where the monsoon rain seemed to linger longer than anywhere else in the world, there lived a man named Hideo. He was the caretaker of a large circular rain barrel that stood in the courtyard of a small stone sanctuary. This barrel was fed by bamboo gutters that ran down from the eaves of the roof, and it was Hideo's duty to ensure that the water inside remained pristine and calm. He was a person who could not abide a ripple to Hideo. The surface of that water was a map of his own responsibility. If a stray leaf fell into the barrel, he would immediately reach for his small, weighted wooden ladle and fish it out. If a gust of wind disturbed the surface, he would stand by with his ladle, hovering over the water, ready to break the tension of any wavelet that dared to form. He worked with a desperate, precise intensity. He believed that if he could keep that single circle of water perfectly still, it would reflect the world with absolute clarity. He thought that this stillness was a sign of his own competence, proof that he was successfully protecting the sanctuary from the chaos of the outside world. His hands were often chapped from the cold water. His shoulders were permanently hunched, as if he were constantly leaning over the edge of the barrel. Staring into the depths, he rarely slept soundly, because he worried that if he turned his back, a sudden downpour would create a chaotic, muddy mess. He was a man who had dedicated his life to the impossible task of keeping the surface of a rain barrel undisturbed during a storm. One afternoon, the old well tender of the mountain, a man whose skin looked like the crinkled bark of a cedar tree, came down to the sanctuary. The well tender did not carry a ladle. He did not carry anything at all save for a small, clear glass marble held within his palm. He watched Hideo for a long time. He watched him chase a tiny ripple with his wooden tool, his face twisted in a mask of frustrated vigilance. The air was cool and smelled of wet stone and moss. The sound of the rain was a constant, drumming rhythm against the roof tiles, and every few seconds, a fresh drop would fall from the gutter, strike the surface of the barrel, and send out a ring of movement that Hideo would immediately scramble to correct. Hideo did not notice the well tender until the man walked right up to the edge of the barrel. Hideo was breathing hard, his ladle dripping onto the stones. He felt a sudden, sharp spike of anxiety, certain that he was about to be criticized for some flaw in his method. But the well-tender said nothing. He only reached into his pocket and produced the smooth, clear glass marble. With a gentle, deliberate motion, he dropped the marble into the center of the barrel. It sank through the water with a soft, liquid sound, disappearing into the darkness of the basin. Hideo gasped, his hands flying to his ladle. He began to frantically stir the water, trying to find the marble, trying to calm the violent waves his own agitation had created. He wanted to find the object and remove it. He wanted to restore the surface to that flat, glass-like state he craved. But the more he worked, the more sediment he kicked up from the bottom. The water turned from a clear, dark amber to a murky, cloud-like gray. He could no longer see the marble, and he could no longer see his own reflection. Hideo stopped, his ladle trembling, and looked at the well-tender with eyes full of apology and exhaustion. He felt as though he had failed a profound test. He expected the well-tender to show him a better way to scoop, a faster way to calm the surface, or a more efficient technique for removing the obstruction. Instead, the old man simply sat down on the wet ground. He pointed to the water, which was now swirling with the mud Hideo had stirred up. He did not ask Hideo to fix it. He did not ask him to clean it. He only asked a single quiet question. He asked, "What happens to the water if you simply stop moving the ladle?" Hideo stood still. He was afraid to let go. He felt that if he stopped, he was admitting defeat, acknowledging that his efforts were useless. But his arms were burning with fatigue. His heart was racing with the fear of being seen in such a state of disarray. He looked at the barrel, and he saw that the water was indeed starting to respond to the lack of interference. The swirls were beginning to lose their momentum. The smaller waves were folding into the larger ones, and then vanishing altogether. The murky sediment, no longer being stirred by the ladle, began to follow the pull of gravity, sinking slowly, grain by grain, back toward the bottom of the barrel. It was a slow, invisible process. It required a kind of patience Hideo had never practiced. He stood there, holding his breath, watching the water. He was learning something that felt entirely new. He was realizing that his presence, his very desire to make things right, was the primary cause of the turbulence he feared most. He was not the guardian of the peace. He was the author of the chaos. As the sun began to dip behind the mountain, casting a long, pale shadow across the courtyard, the water inside the barrel became clear again. Hideo could see the marble resting peacefully at the bottom, perfectly still, caught in the light that had managed to penetrate the depth. The surface was now so quiet that it began to mirror the movement of the clouds drifting overhead. He had not removed the object. He had not prevented the rain from falling. He had only stopped fighting the nature of the barrel. He had only stopped trying to be the master of the ripples. He looked at the well-tender, hoping for an explanation, expecting a lecture on the virtues of patience or the danger of pride. But the old man was already rising to leave. He gave a small, barely perceptible nod. He walked toward the gate, his footsteps soft on the damp earth. Hideo was left alone in the deepening twilight. He looked at the ladle in his hand. He looked at the water. He realized that the ladle was not a tool for protection. It was a weight. It was a way of staying engaged with the surface, a way of convincing himself that he had power over things that were destined to move. He placed the ladle on the ground. He decided not to pick it up again. He felt a sudden, strange lightness in his chest, a sensation of having stepped out of a heavy, rain-soaked garment. He was still the caretaker of the sanctuary, and the rain would continue to fall. But for the first time in his life, he was not the enemy of the weather. He was just a man standing in a garden, watching the water settle. He realized that he could experience the rain without needing to manage its effects on his own composure. He could watch the ripples come and go, knowing that they were not failures, and knowing that the clarity he sought was already there, hidden underneath the noise, waiting for him to finally become quiet enough to see it. The evening was turning into night. The air felt cleaner, and the scent of the wet earth was no longer a sign of an impending storm, but a sign of life being nourished. Hideo felt the urge to start worrying, to start planning his defense against the next gust of wind. But he caught himself. He felt the tension rising in his shoulders, and he consciously allowed it to drop. He felt the need to apologize for his exhaustion, and he consciously allowed himself to simply be tired. He was not yet at peace in the way he thought peace should look, but he was no longer at war with the water. He stood in the dark, watching the way the stars caught on the surface of the barrel. Each star was a point of light, bright and steady. Resting in the black depth, the water was so still that it felt as if the barrel were holding the entire sky. He was not doing anything to make this happen. He was not working. He was not fixing. He was just witnessing. And in that witnessing, he found a place to rest that was deeper than sleep. He realized that the marble at the bottom was not an obstruction, but a center. It was a point of focus that was always there, immutable and calm, even when the surface was screaming with the chaos of the rain. He began to walk toward his small room at the back of the sanctuary. He felt his steps were slow, deliberate, and free of the frantic energy that usually drove him. He knew that tomorrow the rain would return. He knew that the wind would blow, and the leaves would fall, and the surface of the barrel would be disturbed again. But he was not afraid of tomorrow. He was not carrying the weight of the future on his back. He had learned that the water would always settle if he just gave it the time. He had learned that the water was not his to control, but his to inhabit. And for tonight, that was enough. He would sleep in the silence of the valley, and the barrel would sit in the courtyard, and the moon would shine down on the water, and everything would be held in a quiet, unfolding rhythm that did not need a ladle to be complete. The stillness Hideo eventually found in the courtyard did not come from removing the marble or from silencing the rain. It came from realizing that he was the one actively stirring the sediment. This is the quiet heart of the trouble we carry. We think our job is to be the perfect guardians of a clear surface, and when the world or someone we love, or our own complicated past, drops a marble into our basin, we treat it as an intrusion that must be managed. We think that by reaching in with our wooden ladles of worry and control, we are helping. We think we are protecting the sanctuary. But the truth is that we are the ones who turn the clear water into mud. This teaching is not a call for you to stop caring about the people in your life, or to become distant, or to act as if nothing affects you. That would be another form of coldness, another way to build a wall instead of finding a home. Instead, it is an invitation to look at the difference between genuine presence and frantic intervention. When you feel that surge of anxiety, that tight, pulsing need to fix a situation, or to soothe someone else's distress so that your own discomfort might finally end, pause and ask yourself if you are truly helping, or if you are just reaching for your ladle. Are you trying to calm the water, or are you just afraid of what the ripples say about you? We often confuse our internal peace with a demand for external order. We believe that we can only be safe if everyone around us is behaving predictably, if no mistakes are being made, and if no difficult emotions are being expressed. But the world is always raining, and people are always dropping their own marbles into the shared basin of existence. You are not responsible for catching every leaf, and you are not responsible for erasing every ripple. When you try to bear that burden, you become the primary source of your own suffering. You add a second layer of distress to whatever is happening. The first layer is the difficulty of life itself, which is unavoidable. The second layer is the way the mind screams, "This should not be happening. I must fix this. I have to stop this ripple right now." It is that second layer, the layering of judgment upon the experience, that leaves us exhausted. It is the insistence that the water must stay glassy and flat that makes us feel like we are constantly failing. Consider how often you have stayed awake at night, trying to solve an interaction that is already over. You are stirring the barrel of your own memory, kicking up all the silt, and then wondering why the water is so murky. You are trying to use your mind to force the past into a different shape, but the past is not water, it is already solid. The only thing you are changing is the clarity of your own current state. Mindfulness is simply the act of watching the ripple without needing to reach for the tool of control. It is knowing that a ripple is just a movement, not a catastrophe. It is seeing the leaf fall into the barrel and allowing it to be there, knowing that it will sink or float in its own time, without the need for your intervention. When the Buddha spoke of the nature of things, he was not teaching a cold philosophy of detachment. He was pointing toward a deeper way of inhabiting the world. He was suggesting that we suffer because we hold on to things, our opinions, our expectations, our need to be the hero, our fear of being seen as incompetent, as if they were permanent fixtures of our identity. We treat our thoughts as if they are the water itself, rather than just the passing reflections on the surface. When you are entangled in the needs of others, you are essentially trying to drink the whole barrel to save the water. You are losing your own boundaries in a desperate bid to preserve a state of calm that is fundamentally impossible to maintain through force. True compassion begins when you can stand by the barrel, look at the water, and say to yourself, I see the movement, I acknowledge the difficulty, but I do not need to stir the silt. I can let this be difficult without making it a crisis. I can let this be sad without making it a war. The old well-tender did not tell Adio to stop watching. He did not tell him to stop caring about the sanctuary. He only gave him a permission slip to stop playing the part of the stormbringer. You have been playing that part for a long time. You have believed that if you stop being hypervigilant, if you stop anticipating every potential problem, everything will fall apart. But look at your life. Has your constant monitoring actually kept the water still? Or has it only kept your own hands raw and your own mind clouded by the dust of your efforts? The fear of letting go is based on the false belief that you are the only thing holding the world together. This is a profound misunderstanding of your role in the lives of those you love. When you can sit by the barrel without the ladle, you actually offer a much greater gift to those around you. You offer them a person who is centered, a person who is not projecting their own anxiety onto the situation, a person who can listen without trying to perform a rescue. You stop being a source of added noise and start becoming a place of resonance. You stop trying to fix the reflection and start being the stillness that allows others to see their own reflection more clearly. This shift in perspective is what we mean by letting go. It is not an act of abandonment. It is an act of trust. It is trusting that the barrel has a bottom, that the sediment will eventually settle, and that the water is capable of returning to clarity on its own. You do not have to provide the clarity. You only have to stop providing the agitation. When you feel that familiar itch to step in, to explain, to manage, or to smooth over a situation, feel the tension rise in your body. Notice the urge to grab the ladle, and then, just for one cycle of breath, choose to keep your hands resting on your lap. You are training the nervous system to be comfortable with the presence of movement. You are teaching the heart that it can remain open even when the surface of its life is being disrupted. This is a practice of endurance, but it is a soft endurance. It is the strength of the willow that bends with the wind rather than the iron rod that tries to stand against it. You do not need to become someone else to find this peace. You are already the barrel. You are already the depth. The clarity is not something you go out and find, and it is not something you build with your tools. It is what remains when you finally stop believing that you must be the master of the rain. Notice how your body responds to this idea. Perhaps there is a softening in the belly. Perhaps there is a slight loosening of the jaw. This is the beginning of the return to your own center. You have been holding your breath for so long, trying to keep the world from shaking, that you have forgotten how to simply breathe the air of your own life. But the air is here. The stillness is waiting. It has been waiting for you to realize that you can witness the turbulence and still be the one who stands on solid ground. There is nothing in your past and nothing in your anticipated future that requires you to lose your capacity for this stillness. Even in the middle of a monsoon, even when everything around you feels like it is falling into chaos, you have a private internal space that is protected. It is the space at the bottom of the barrel where the marble rests. It is where you go when the surface is too loud. You do not have to live your entire life in the mud of the stirred-up sediment. You can sink. You can rest. You can let the world happen without you needing to have an opinion on it, or a solution for it, or a defense against it. This is the great secret of the garden. The gardener does not make the plants grow. He only prepares the soil and removes the weeds, and then he waits. He knows that the growth belongs to the nature of the plant, not to his own will. You have been trying to make the plants grow by pulling on them, and you are exhausted because the work is impossible. Stop pulling. Watch the rain fall. Acknowledge that the weather is beyond your command, and trust that the ground knows how to hold the life that has been entrusted to it. You are safe enough to be a witness now. You are safe enough to set the tool aside. The water will clear, not because you forced it, but because you allowed the motion of your own heart to slow down. As you move into the next phase of our time together, keep that image of the settling sediment in your mind. Whenever you find your thoughts becoming murky, whenever you find yourself trying to solve the ripples in your own heart, simply return to the idea of the barrel. Let the movement be. Let the mud sink. You are not the surface. You are the deep, dark, and perfectly clear water that holds the light of the stars. There is such a profound sense of relief in realizing that you are allowed to just sit. You are allowed to be a person who watches the rain without needing to be the one who directs the flow. How does it feel to think of yourself not as a manager of outcomes, but as a space for experiences to unfold? Just hold that question in the back of your mind as we go deeper into the practice of being the barrel. You are doing well. You are finding your way home to a state of being that asks nothing more of you than to exist in quiet and in full awareness. If you are ready, let us step into the quiet garden of your own awareness. You do not need to change your posture, and you do not need to force your mind into a state of unnatural stillness. Simply allow your body to be heavy, supported by the surface beneath you, just as the stones of the sanctuary floor support the weight of the rain barrel. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Unclench the small muscles around your eyes. Feel the length of your spine, the natural rhythm of your breath. And acknowledge that for these next few moments, you have absolutely nothing to repair. Imagine that you are standing in the courtyard we just visited in the cool, dim light of the evening. The rain has stopped for a moment, leaving the air thick with the scent of damp moss and wet stone. Before you stands that large, dark barrel, filled with water that holds the reflection of the pale twilight sky. This barrel is your internal life. It is the space where your thoughts, your worries, and your awareness gather. For so long you have stood here, holding the wooden ladle, watching the surface, waiting for the next drop to fall, ready to strike at the first sign of a ripple. But tonight, we are going to practice the art of placing the ladle on the ground. You might visualize yourself reaching out and setting that heavy, wet tool down on the stone path. You do not have to throw it away, and you do not have to break it. You are simply choosing to be finished with the work of managing the surface. Observe how your body feels now. Knowing that the ladle is no longer in your grip, there is likely a strange sensation of vulnerability, perhaps even a flash of alarm, as if you have left a gate unlatched. That is perfectly natural. It is just the old habit of the fixer trying to assert its control. Take a slow, deep breath in, and as you exhale, let that alarm drift away with the sound of your own air. You are safe. The water will do what water does, regardless of whether you are watching it, with a weapon of control in your hand. Now bring to your mind a thought that has been circling your heart today. Perhaps it is a concern about a conversation that left you feeling drained, or a lingering sense of guilt because you feel you didn't do enough for someone you love. See that concern not as a monster, but as a single falling leaf. Watch it drift through the air and land gently upon the surface of the barrel. See the ripple it creates. It is a small, widening circle, moving toward the edge of your consciousness. Notice your own immediate reaction. Does your mind reach for the imaginary ladle? Does your chest tighten with the urge to dive in and smooth it out? Just witness that impulse. You don't have to follow it, don't have to act on it. You can simply notice that the urge is there, like a bird fluttering in a tree, and then let it be. Watch the ripple move. Watch it touch the rim of the barrel. Watch it dissolve into the stillness of the water. You are not failing by watching. You are not being uncaring by standing still. You are learning that your peace is not a fragile thing that shatters at the touch of a leaf. Your peace is the depth of the barrel itself. It is the dark, cool water that holds the light of the stars. If you feel another thought arrive, another leaf hitting the water, just greet it with the same gentle, detached attention. Imagine you are the well tender, standing in the garden, feeling the cool moisture of the evening on your skin. You are not the storm. You are the one who is watching the storm from a place of absolute safety. If your thoughts become busy, if you feel the sediment of old memories beginning to cloud the water, do not panic. Do not try to scrub the barrel clean. Just settle back into the feeling of your own breath. Allow the water to be murky for a while. The sediment will sink. it will find its way back to the bottom without your assistance. You are a container for the world's movement, not a filter that must remove it. As you breathe, feels your heart slowing down to match the rhythm of the garden. The air is still. The sanctuary is quiet. The water is waiting to be itself again. There is no clock in this garden. There is no one grading your ability to remain calm. If you become distracted, if you find yourself back in the habit of fixing, simply notice that too. You can smile at the recognition, and with a soft, slow exhalation, you can set the ladle down again. This practice is not a performance, it is a returning. Every time you realize you have been trying to control the uncontrollable, you have had a moment of profound clarity. You have seen the habit, and by seeing it, you have already begun to move beyond it. Feel the support beneath you once more. The mattress is the solid, unmoving ground of the garden. Your body is the vessel that holds your awareness. Notice how much lighter your hands feel when they are not clutching the wood. Notice how much more space there is in your chest when you stop trying to anticipate the next drop of rain. You are not a repairer of ripples. You are a witness to the unfolding of your own life. And from this vantage point, everything looks different. The world is still moving. Yes, but it is moving through you, not against you. Imagine now that the glass marble we spoke of earlier, the one that sits at the very bottom of the barrel, is glowing with a soft, steady light. This light represents your true center, the part of you that has never been touched by the chaos of the rain, the part of you that remains perfectly clear even when the water above is swirling with sediment. You can rest your awareness here. You can let the surface move, and you can let the middle be stirred, but you can always find your way back to this steady, silent, luminous point. There is no rush to finish this practice. There is no destination you must reach by the end of the night. You are simply practicing the act of stopping. You are practicing the beauty of being still in the presence of life's natural, endless movement. As you continue to breathe, let the edges of your awareness soften even further. Let the walls of the room dissolve into the quiet dark of the garden. Let the time dissolve into the eternal slow drip of the water. You are safe, you are whole, and you have everything you need to simply be. If a worry returns, let it be like a shadow passing over the stone path. It has no substance. It has no power to hurt you unless you decide to give it a home. You are not refusing to feel. You are refusing to be owned by your own reactions. You are taking your life back from the habit of constant intervention. Feel the quiet expanding in your lungs. Feel the darkness wrapping around you, cool and protective, like a blanket made of night air. You are already in the center of the garden. You have already set the tool aside. You are simply waiting, in the most comfortable, peaceful way, for the water to show you its own natural clarity. Is there any part of you that still feels the need to hold on? If so, just acknowledge it. Let it be there like a knot in a piece of wood, and breathe around it. You do not have to untie the knot. You do not have to make it go away. You can just notice that it is there, and then return your attention to the light at the bottom of the barrel. The light is not trying to fix the knot. The light is just shining, and that is all you need to do. Just shine, just be, just remain for these final moments of our practice, as the vessel that is finally allowed to rest. The silence is your friend now. It is not an empty, lonely thing. It is a full, deep, and nourishing space that has been waiting for your return. As you lie here, listen to the way your breath moves in and out, like the quiet current of the stream that feeds the garden. There is no effort in the breathing. There is no strategy in the resting. There is only the simple, beautiful fact of your own presence. You are here, you are safe, and the rain, whatever it may be doing, is just part of the garden, a part of the beauty, a part of the whole. You are doing well. Just keep breathing slow and steady as the water begins to clear. In a high mountain monastery far above the reach of the monsoon valleys, there lived an old monk named Kaito. Kaito was known for his strange, singular devotion to a large iron basin kept in the center of the tea hall. This basin was not for washing, nor was it for tea. It was kept filled with water that Kaito insisted on bringing from a high spring, a journey that required him to climb a narrow, dangerous path every morning before dawn. The monks whispered that Kaito kept the basin to measure the quality of his own practice. If the water remained clear, he was content. If a single speck of dust or a fallen petal disturbed the surface, He would spend hours in silent, agonizing meditation, trying to understand what error he had made to cause such a disruption. He had become a prisoner of his own standard. He did not realize that the temple itself was filled with the bustle of life. Novices ran past the tea hall with their robes fluttering. Wind whipped through the open shutters, carrying pine needles and grit from the forest. Kaito tried to block these things out. He closed the shutters. He discouraged the novices from walking near the hall. He kept his head bowed, his eyes fixed on the iron basin. His hands curled into white-knuckled fists whenever a tremor of movement rippled the water. He was convinced that he was maintaining purity, but he was actually living in a state of perpetual, guarded warfare. One winter, a young student named Sora came to study under Kaito. Sora was not a scholar. She had been a village weaver, accustomed to the messiness of dye-vats and the tangled reality of threads. When she first saw Kaito sitting by the iron basin, she noticed how his shoulders were pulled up to his ears, and how he would flinch whenever a distant temple bell rang. She saw that he was not watching the water at all. He was watching his own fear of the water being moved. For weeks, Sora said nothing. She simply watched the way the light played on the surface of the basin, and she watched how Kaito seemed to wither away, consumed by the effort of keeping the world at bay. One morning, the wind was particularly fierce. It howled through the eaves, and a large, heavy branch from a cedar tree broke free, crashing through the window of the tea hall. Dust, debris, and pine needles showered the room. A significant amount of grit landed directly in Kaito's iron basin. The water, once clear and reflective, was instantly turned into a slurry of mud and debris. Kaito let out a strangled cry. He lunged for his cleaning cloths, his face pale with panic. He began to frantically wipe the basin, his movements sharp and desperate, as if he were trying to erase the very reality of what had happened. He looked as though he were on the verge of collapse. Sora walked over, but she did not help him wipe the water. She did not offer words of comfort. Instead, she picked up a small, smooth river stone from the floor, one of the many that had blown in with the branch. She walked to the basin, and while Kaito was still frantically scrubbing, she dropped the stone into the center of the murky water. The impact sent a shockwave through the mud. Kaito froze. He looked at her with an expression of pure, unadulterated horror. He expected her to be scolded, perhaps even sent away. But Sora only knelt beside him. She looked at the water and then at his shaking, ink-stained hands. She did not tell him to stop. She did not lecture him on the nature of reality. She only reached out and gently placed her hand over his, forcing him to pause his frantic scrubbing. The room was cold. The wind was still whistling through the broken window. Sora looked at the basin and said that the water had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Kaito was too stunned to speak. She pointed to the sediment that was now, finally, beginning to settle. She told him that he had spent years trying to keep the mountain from being a mountain, and the wind from being the wind. She said that his mistake was not that he cared for the water, but that he thought he was the one who had to define the purity of the water. She asked him what he would be if he were not the keeper of the basin. Kaito looked at his hands. For the first time in years, he felt the cold bite of the winter air on his skin. He realized he had been so busy protecting the reflection that he had forgotten to feel the presence of the room, the scent of the cedar, and the reality of the season. He did not suddenly become enlightened. He did not become a man of perfect, unshakable calm. But he did something he had never done before. He took a slow, deep breath and he let go of the edge of the basin. His hands fell into his lap. He did not reach for his cloths. He sat there in the chaos of the ruined hall, and he watched the mud settle. It took a long time. The dust motes danced in the cold, thin light, and the water grew clearer, layer by layer. He watched as the stone Sora had dropped came to rest at the bottom, a solid, unmoving presence in the heart of the basin. He realized that the water was not ruined. It was just different. It was now holding the stone, and the memories of the cedar branch, and the reality of the winter wind. He looked at Sora. He did not thank her, for that would have been a performance. He only nodded. He stood up, his joints stiff from his years of rigid sitting, and he walked to the broken window. He felt the wind on his face. It was sharp, biting, and alive. It was the same wind that had ruined his basin, but now it felt like a friend. It was the wind of the world, and he was finally standing in it. He returned to the basin. picked up the stone Sora had dropped, and placed it on the altar shelf, not as a symbol of the mess, but as a reminder that he was no longer required to fight the elements. He did not stop caring about the temple. He continued to keep the hall clean, and he continued to bring water from the spring. But he stopped blocking the shutters. He stopped holding his breath. If a leaf fell, he left it until the morning. If the wind brought a bit of grit, he simply laughed, a small, rusty sound that he hadn't made in decades. He had learned that the basin could hold the stone without ceasing to be a basin, and that he could hold his own life without ceasing to be a man. He stopped trying to be the filter of reality and began to be the container of it. This shift was small, almost invisible to anyone who didn't know the history of his hands, but it was total. He no longer felt the need to apologize for the movement of the world. He understood that the depth of his practice was not measured by the clarity of the surface, but by his ability to remain present when the surface was stirred. He saw that the mud was not an enemy. The mud was just the earth making itself known, and he at last was standing on the earth. He was no longer trying to float above it in a state of suspended, anxious perfection. When Sora eventually left the monastery to return to her weaving, Kaito did not try to keep her. He did not try to preserve the moment of their realization. He let the seasons change. The monastery grew quiet, then loud, then quiet again. Kaito grew old, but his shoulders remained dropped. His breath remained slow. He was often found sitting by the basin, sometimes watching it, sometimes just listening to the sound of the wind, and sometimes doing nothing at all. He had found the marble at the bottom of his own life, and he had stopped being afraid of the ripples that played across the top. There is a lesson here, not in the breaking of the window, but in the decision to stop scrubbing. There is a lesson in the way Kaito allowed the stone to sit in the water, a symbol of everything he had tried to keep out. What have you been trying to keep out of your own basin? What are the stones you are so afraid will drop into your life and stir the mud? Perhaps they are the realities of your own limitations, or the imperfections of your loved ones, or the simple, unavoidable changes that life insists upon. You have been scrubbing so hard for so long that you have forgotten what it feels like to have clean, relaxed hands. Tonight, as the night deepens, consider the basin. Consider the stone. You do not have to invite the storm, but you also do not have to spend your life building a wall against it. You can let the stones be where they are. You can let the mud settle in its own time. You are not a perfectionist by nature. You are a living being by design, and living beings are meant to be changed, moved, and occasionally stirred. This is not a failure of your character. It is the very definition of your participation in the world. As you lie here, feel your own hands. Open them. Let them rest, palm up or palm down, in whatever position feels most natural. You do not need to hold a ladle. You do not need to hold a cloth. You do not need to hold your own story together with force. You can allow the sediment of the day to sink. You can allow the water of your awareness to return to its own natural stillness. It is waiting for you. It has been waiting for you under all that activity, under all that fixing, and under all that fear. It is the quiet, deep part of you that knows how to simply exist in the dark, in the cool, and in the peace of the night. And as you sink deeper into this quiet, let yourself notice that the world is still there. But you are no longer the one who has to direct it. The wind may blow, but you are not the one who has to account for it. The leaves may fall, but you are not the one who has to catch them. You are allowed to be the basin. You are allowed to be the holder. You are allowed to be, at long last, someone who is finally free to rest. How does it feel to know that the water will clear without your permission? Just notice the feeling. Let it wash over you like a tide. Let it settle, just like the mud, until there is nothing left but the calm, dark, and perfectly clear water of your own resting mind. The reason you have felt so tired for so long is not because you are weak, but because you have been attempting to hold back the tide with a sieve. You believe that if you just work a little harder, if you just anticipate the next ripple a fraction of a second sooner, you can prevent the water in your life from ever becoming turbulent again. This is the great illusion of the fixer. You think that the discomfort of an unsettled situation is a sign of your failure, so you rush to smooth it over, hoping to regain a sense of safety. But the reality is that life is inherently moving, and the water will always eventually be disturbed. When a situation arises that feels difficult, we experience the first ripple. This is the natural, unavoidable part of life. Perhaps someone is angry with you, or a plan you counted on has fallen apart, or a feeling of loss has washed over you. This is the first pain. It is the simple, direct experience of the world as it is. But then the mind, in its desperate, misguided attempt to protect you, immediately adds a second layer. It begins to narrate the experience. It says, "This is bad. I should have prevented this. I am not good enough. I need to fix this right now, or everything will fall apart." This second layer is where the exhaustion truly lives. You are not just dealing with the situation itself. You are dealing with the internal war you are waging against the situation. You are essentially pouring more water into the barrel, stirring it frantically, and trying to build a dam at the same time. You are exhausted because you have made your own inner peace dependent on the absence of ripples. When you define your safety by how still the surface is, you are forced to become a guard, a warden, a soldier who can never take off their armor. You become so afraid of the movement that you stop living within the water, and instead spend your entire existence standing over the rim, trembling at every breath of wind. This is why we talk about the difference between empathy and entanglement. True empathy allows you to stand by the barrel and acknowledge that the water is moving. You can feel the sadness, the frustration, or the concern without needing to immediately grab your ladle and begin your frantic, soul-draining work of control. You can acknowledge the ripple without needing to be the one who smooths it out. When you detach your sense of worth from your ability to fix others, you suddenly find yourself with so much more space. You are no longer trying to solve their lives for them, and you are no longer trying to solve your own by managing their perceptions. Many of us have turned our pain into a kind of identity. We believe that if we stop worrying, we stop caring. We think that if we stop rehashing the past, we are somehow betraying the lessons we learned. We feel that if we stop rehearsal of the future, we are being irresponsible. But this is just fear wearing a mask of virtue. It is the mind's way of saying it has forgotten how to trust. It has forgotten that the water has a bottom, that the sediment has a natural cycle, and that you do not need to be the creator of the calm. You only need to be the space where the calm can return. Consider the way you look at your own mistakes. When you have done something you regret, the mind usually grabs the heaviest stone it can find and drops it into your basin, creating a massive, muddy wave of self-judgment. You tell yourself that you must suffer through this feeling, that you must punish yourself until you feel better, or that you must obsessively re-examine the moment until you have somehow rewritten history. But this does not clear the water. It only keeps the mud in suspension. It keeps the past alive and current, preventing the sediment from settling. True self-forgiveness is not about denying what you did. It is about acknowledging that you are a human being who was caught in a moment of turbulence, and then giving yourself permission to stop stirring the mud. You are not the mud. You are the basin. You are the deep, dark, and resilient vessel that contains the experience. When you can see the difference between the movement on the surface and the depth of the bottom, you gain a kind of freedom that no amount of fixing could ever provide. You can stand in the middle of a storm, feel the rain hitting your face, and yet remain internally anchored. You can listen to the difficult words of another person and see them as ripples rather than threats to your existence. You can navigate the uncertainty of your own life without needing to know exactly where the next drop will fall. This is not a cold or detached way of living. It is the most compassionate way to live. When you stop trying to manage the ripples of others, you become a person who can actually witness their experience. You stop trying to change them, and instead, you start letting them be exactly who they are. You stop taking their turbulence as a personal challenge, and instead, you recognize it as a part of their own journey. And in doing so, you free them as much as you free yourself. You become a stable presence, a quiet place where the water can finally settle. You have spent so much energy trying to be the perfect gardener, pulling every leaf before it touches the surface, that you haven't realized the beauty of the garden itself. The garden requires the rain. The garden requires the movement. Your attempts to create a static, unchanging life are what keep you perpetually drained. But tonight, you can begin to see that you do not need to have a strategy for every emotion. You do not need to have a retort for every thought. You do not need to have a solution for every problem. You just need to be the barrel. As you lie here, listen to the way your breath moves. It is the most natural thing in the world. It comes in, it goes out, and it never asks for your permission or your management. It just happens. Your life is happening in exactly the same way. The challenges you face, the emotions you feel, and the people you encounter are all part of a larger, unfolding movement that you do not have to orchestrate. You can let the ripples move. You can watch them travel from one side of your awareness to the other. You can even enjoy the way they play with the light, without ever feeling the need to catch them. Does it feel scary to let go of the ladle? It might. That is just the old habit of the fixer trying to retain its power. Let that feeling be there. It is just another ripple. Watch it, notice it, and then let it continue on its way. You do not need to fight the fear of letting go. You just need to recognize that the fear is not the truth. The truth is that you are held by the same life that moves the water. You are a part of the garden, not its master. And because you are a part of it, you are always, fundamentally, being supported. There is a profound stillness waiting for you in the very center of your being. It is not something you have to reach for, and it is not something you have to build. It is what is left when you stop trying to fix the world. It is the clarity of the water when the mud has finally sunk to the bottom. Tonight, give yourself the gift of that clarity. You have earned it by the simple fact of your own existence. You have earned it by being a person who has tried so hard to do what is right. Now it is time to do what is gentle. It is time to rest in the understanding that you are not the storm, and you are not the ripple, and you are not the mud. You are the deep, quiet, and perfectly capable basin. Everything you have been carrying, all the worries about how you are perceived, all the anxiety about whether you are doing enough, and all the pressure to keep the surface of your life pristine. You can lay it down now. You can leave it on the stone path beside the barrel. You do not need to pack it up or store it away. You just need to let it be. The path will be there in the morning. But for now, the garden is quiet, the night is deep, and the water is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is settling, it is clearing, it is becoming still. And in this stillness, you are finding your way back to a part of yourself that has never been troubled, never been stirred, and never been anything less than complete. This wisdom is not something you leave in the monastery or the sanctuary. It is meant for the moments when your life feels the most fragile, the most urgent, and the most demanding of your constant attention. Think of the times during your day when you find yourself checking your phone, waiting for a signal that everything is fine, hoping for a message that will tell you you are valued or safe. That small repetitive action is just you reaching for your ladle, trying to soothe the anxiety of the ripple before it has even had a chance to settle. When you feel that urge, stop, recognize it. You are the basin. You do not need the message to arrive to be a person of value. You do not need the external confirmation to be whole. Let the phone sit, let the anxiety sit, and feel the weight of your own existence beneath it all. Or consider those quiet, heavy nights when you lie in the dark, replaying a mistake from years ago, turning the memory over in your mind as if you could somehow change the outcome by thinking about it more. You are stirring the barrel of your own past, turning clear water into a thick, dark soup of regret. You are convinced that if you keep replaying the scene, you will eventually find the solution that justifies your pain. But there is no solution to a memory. There is only the settling. Tonight, when your mind begins that old, familiar sequence, remember that you are the vessel, not the agitator. You can watch the thought pass through your mind like a shadow across the stone floor of the garden. You do not have to give it a home. You do not have to invite it to stay. You can just notice that it is there, and then return to the slow, steady rhythm of your breathing. Maybe you feel a persistent, low-level hum of inadequacy, a feeling that you are behind in your life, or that everyone else has found a rhythm that you are still trying to learn. You compare your internal world, with all its doubts and complexities, to the external performance of those around you. You are trying to measure your depth by someone else's surface. This is a burden you were never meant to carry. You do not have to be anywhere else than where you are right now. The garden does not compare itself to the forest. The barrel does not compare itself to the river. Each has its own capacity, its own depth, and its own way of holding the rain. You are enough, not because you have achieved anything, but because you are the container of your own life. There will be times when you feel the pressure to manage your relationships, to steer the emotions of others, or to hold up the world so that it does not collapse. You think that if you stop, the roof will fall in, but the sanctuary is held by its own foundations. The people you love have their own wells, their own barrels, and their own capacity to hold their rain. When you stop trying to fix them, you actually become a better companion. You stop being a source of added noise and start being a place of silence, where they can actually hear themselves think. You offer them the grace of your presence, rather than the pressure of your management. Caring for others does not require you to lose yourself in their ripples. It only requires you to remain still enough to witness them without fear. Perhaps you are someone who smiles while feeling heavy inside, playing the part of the steady one, so that others do not have to worry. You have become an expert at hiding your own ripples, smoothing the surface so perfectly that no one suspects how tired you truly are. You think this is strength, but it is just another form of distance. True strength is allowing the vulnerability to exist. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be empty. You are allowed to be in the middle of a storm without having to pretend that the sky is blue. When you let go of the mask, you find that the world does not end. You find that you are more human, more reachable, and more connected to the reality of the garden. The discipline of this path is not found in the grand gestures. It is found in the small, almost microscopic choices you make every single day. It is the choice to pause for one breath before you react to an unkind word. It is the choice to put your hand on your heart when you feel the pang of shame, rather than attacking yourself for feeling it. It is the choice to acknowledge that you are feeling anxious, and then choosing to go for a walk, rather than falling into the spiral of your own narrative. These small acts are the way you build the bottom of the basin. You are reinforcing the foundation of your own peace, layer by layer, sediment by sediment. Do you ever feel guilty for resting, as if you have not earned the right to simply stop? You have been trained to believe that your worth is tied to your output, to your vigilance, to the way you manage the world. But rest is not a reward for work. Rest is the natural state of the garden when the sun goes down. You do not need to earn your right to be still. You do not need to prove your value through your exhaustion. Your value is inherent, baked into the very nature of who you are. Just as the capacity to hold the moon is built into the nature of the water, let the guilt be another ripple. Watch it drift toward the edge and let it go. There is a vast, quiet intelligence in your body that knows how to recover. It knows how to draw in the air of the night, how to loosen the grip of the muscles, and how to allow the mind to drift. It is waiting for you to stop the struggle. You have spent your entire day trying to keep the surface perfect, and now you are being offered the chance to see what happens when you finally stop. The barrel will not break. The water will not vanish. The sanctuary will continue to stand. You are free to be the container and nothing more. When you feel the urge to check the phone, to rehearse the conversation, to plan the next day, or to judge your own progress, bring your awareness back to your body. Feel the weight of your hands. Feel the texture of your skin. You are a physical being, grounded in the reality of the present moment. The world of thought is a different realm, one that is easily manipulated and easily cluttered. But the world of your body is solid. It is here. It is the real, tangible, and undeniable truth of your life. When you get lost in the ripples of the mind, come home to the steady beat of the heart. You can care for your life without gripping it with white knuckles. You can love your friends without trying to manage their moods. You can do your work without needing to be the one who ensures every detail goes perfectly. You are a part of a much larger process, one that has been unfolding long before you arrived and will continue long after you depart. Your role is not to be the architect, but to be the witness. You are the space where the garden happens, and that space is wide, and it is deep, and it is profoundly, deeply peaceful. As you reflect on the small moments of your day, see if you can find one or two places where you might have reached for the ladle. Do not judge yourself for it. Just recognize the habit. Notice that you did it. And then imagine in your mind's eye, setting that tool down once more. You are relearning the art of existence. You are remembering how to be in the world without being of the world's turbulence. You are becoming someone who knows that they are not the storm, but the ground upon which the storm falls. There is no finish line in this practice. You will reach for the ladle again tomorrow. You will get lost in the ripples again, and you will feel the pressure of the world again. That is not a failure. That is just the way of the garden. The practice is not to never reach for the tool. The practice is to notice when you have it in your hand, to feel the weight of it, and then to choose with as much kindness as you can muster, to put it back on the stone floor. You are learning the rhythm of the garden, which is a rhythm of letting go, of settling, and of returning over and over again to the clarity of the bottom. This clarity is your home. It is the place where you can be yourself without needing to apologize for your ripples or your sediment. It is the place where you can listen to the wind without fearing it. It is the place where you can rest fully and completely, knowing that the water will always eventually return to its own natural, steady state. You are doing this work even if it feels slow, and even if it feels like you are just standing in the dark. You are doing the work of being a person who is no longer afraid of their own heart, and that is the most important work you will ever do. As the night continues to hold you, let these thoughts drift away, just like the clouds moving across the moon. You do not need to hold on to these words. You do not need to memorize the lesson. You only need to let the spirit of the lesson settle into your own deep waters. You are a person of grace, a person of depth, and a person who is finally truly allowed to rest. The courtyard is dark now. The rain has stopped entirely, and the mountain air is still thick with the scent of wet stone and cooling earth. You can imagine yourself standing by that large circular rain barrel, looking down into its depths. The water is no longer disturbed by the falling leaves or the gusting wind. It has finished its work of settling. The sediment has returned to the bottom, leaving the water clear, dark, and perfectly reflective. The stars are caught on the surface like scattered diamonds, and the deep, silent bottom of the basin is open to the night. You do not need to do anything to make this happen. You do not need to reach for the ladle. You do not need to guard the surface. The water knows exactly what it is doing. Your body is the barrel. Your awareness is the water. For so long, you have been holding the weight of the ladle, convinced that you were the guardian of the sanctuary. But the night is asking you to set the tool aside. You can let your hands rest by your sides. You can let the tension in your shoulders dissolve into the darkness. You can let the muscles of your face soften, letting go of the expression of concern that you have worn for so long. There is no one here to impress. There is no problem that must be solved before the morning. The water is safe, and so are you. Listen to the quiet of the room. It is a deep, resonant silence that holds everything just as the barrel holds the water. Your breath is moving like the slow, invisible current of a mountain stream. In and out. In and out. You are not trying to change the rhythm. You are not trying to force the breath to be deeper or slower. You are simply allowing the natural, unfolding movement of your life to carry you toward rest. You are a vessel for the experience of being alive, and that experience is finally, beautifully quiet. The mud of the day, the worries of the future, and the echoes of the past are sinking. They are drifting down, grain by grain, into the darkness of the bottom. You do not need to watch them go. You do not need to track their descent. You are the clear water that remains above. You are the space that allows the settling to happen. There is such a profound sense of permission in this realization. You are permitted to be empty. You are permitted to be still. You are permitted to exist without having to contribute or manage or fix. The night is a vast, cooling blanket. It wraps around the sanctuary, the mountain, and the barrel in the courtyard. It holds you in the same way. You are a part of this unfolding night, a part of the stillness that stretches across the valley. There is no boundary between your breath and the air in the room. There is no separation between your awareness and the quiet dark. You are home. You are finally, after so much searching, at home in the basin of your own being. Notice how heavy your limbs have become. The floor is supporting you, the bed is supporting you, and the gravity of the earth is holding you with a gentle, persistent embrace. You are being held. You do not need to hold yourself up. You do not need to hold your thoughts together. You do not need to hold your life in a state of constant, perfect control. The earth is doing the work for you. You can let go of the last remains of effort. You can let your mind dissolve into the dark, soft water of the present. The marble at the bottom of your life is resting in the light. It is still, it is firm, and it is entirely undisturbed. All the movement of the day, all the rushing, and all the noise have been gathered into this one quiet center. You can feel it glowing in the depth of your chest. It is the truth of who you are, beyond the ripples, beyond the sediment, and beyond the need to be anything other than what you are. It is the steady, unchanging point of your own existence. Sleep is just another way of letting the water settle. It is the final, deep surrender to the nature of the night. You are not losing anything by drifting away. You are simply allowing the vessel to be filled with the silence it has been craving. Your mind is like the surface of the barrel, wide and open, reflecting the immense, quiet sky. It is becoming so soft, so calm, that it is no longer possible to tell where you end, and the stillness begins. The words are fading now, becoming like ripples that have already reached the edge and vanished. There is nothing left to carry. The ladle is gone, the worries are gone, and the need to be the keeper of the sanctuary has been replaced by the simple, ancient rhythm of the breath. You are safe in the dark. You are whole in the quiet. You are exactly where the night needs you to be. Everything is settling. Everything is finding its own natural level. You are finally at rest. What if the stillness you have been chasing was not something you had to find, but something that was waiting for you to simply stop looking?